Hello everyone, welcome to today's CCOF webinar, Biometric Recognition, How Do I Know Who You Are? I will go through a quick round of introductions before we get started. CCOF is a unique forum that brings customer experience professionals together onto a platform where they can be informed and inspired. Today we are hosting our 9th virtual event and we thank you all for your enthusiastic participation and making this possible. This event is being brought to you in partnership with Vernacular.ai. I am Shraddha Kanoria, Sales Enablement and Digital Marketing Manager at Vernacular.ai. Our presenter today is Dr. Anil Jain, a distinguished professor of computer science at Michigan State University. He is well known for his path-breaking innovations in the field of pattern recognition, biometrics, and computer vision. He has also lent his experience as a consultant on India's Aadhaar project, which is the world's largest biometric system. We are honored to have him with us today. Our moderator today is MD, who is the founder of this forum. He is an alum of IIT Madras, Michigan State University, and Stanford Business School. He has been an industry veteran for 32 years and an entrepreneur for the last 18 years. He was the first managing director of Dell International Services and is one of the pioneers of India's contact center industry. Currently, he's involved to many startups and a passionate customer experience advocate. I'll go through a quick tips to ensure that you have a great webinar experience today with us. You can submit a question at any time during the webinar in the Q&A box. All attendees have been muted to avoid any inadvertent disturbances. An important note, post your questions only in the Q&A box and not in the chat box. I will monitor your questions and ask them during the Q&A breaks. Now, without further ado, let me hand things over to MD.
Thank you, Shraddha. Again, it's an absolute honor to have Professor Anil Jain today with us. He's, by the way, my advisor as well during my grad school days. So this is the first time I'm listening to him live after my pattern recognition class with him way back in the late 80s. So I'm really looking forward. All of us are looking forward to this, Dr. Jain. Again, like Shraddha mentioned, please post your questions anytime during this talk, and I'll be monitoring them, and I'll ask the questions on all your behalf. So with that, Dr. Jain, floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. It's morning here. Morning and good evening. I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to talk to you. I know your time is very limited, so I appreciate your attending this seminar. Biometrics is not a new topic. It has been around for over 100 years. But now, at least in India, with the introduction of the Aadhaar, it is a household name, but still people do not know how it works. So my objective here is to sort of tell you a little bit about what is biometrics, some milestones of biometrics. There are three important things. How do we do the enrollment, deduplication, verification? How do we define the system error, classification errors or recognition errors, some challenges, and finally the privacy issue, which was finally settled by the Supreme Court in 2018 in the case of Aadhaar. Every industry in India, as well as around the globe, is aware of biometrics and is utilizing it based on their need, requirements, and of course, return on investment. So when we talk of person recognition, traditionally we have been using ID documents, passwords, and PINs. But we now living in a society where people cannot be trusted based on these documents. It's very easy to get a fake driver license, fake passports, and usually people have typically use a very simple PIN number. 1234 is a common PIN number. For password, the word password. I mean, there are a lot of statistics about it. And in fact, I've heard that some people write their PIN number on the ATM card itself, which defeats the purpose of the two-factor authentication here, the card and the PIN. So the central question is, how do we know who is entering the card and PIN, or who is presenting the credentials. And that has been the basis for introducing biometrics and the popularity of biometrics. So here are some statistics about lost and stolen passports, which are the important travel documents. So Interpol is the central agency which keeps a database of about 84 million records of stolen documents. And it was searched 3 billion times in 2018, resulting in close to 300,000 positive hits. So in fact, there are some gangs who are charged with stealing passports from desirable countries like the US, Canada, or Europe. And the reason for that is that once a passport falls into the wrong hands, it can be pilferaged, it can be manipulated, and so on. So even though the security mechanism of the passports and other documents has been increased, it's still the hackers are also sufficiently smart to bypass it. So it's like a cat and mouse game. An organization increases the security, but at the same time there are others who are engaged in bypassing those security mechanisms. So this is one of the problems. I mean, you all are chief customer officers, and I have been told that one of the common question to the help desk is about resetting the passwords. In fact, sometimes it's very frustrating experience that many entities would require your password to have uppercase, lowercase digits, and special characters, which is very difficult for more common man to actually remember it. And that's the reason why everybody bypasses a secure password or high strength password in favor of a simple password which they can remember. So here is the notion of biometrics. On the vertical axis, we have security level. On the horizontal axis is the access method. So the lowest security is what you have. This is your keys or tokens or whatever you're carrying physically with you. Next comes the password or PIN. The problem with that is it can be forgotten, it can be easily cracked. And then finally, we have what you are. That's your body characteristics, which are supposedly unique, stable over time. And these are natural in the sense that we recognize each other based on their face. So why can't a computer recognize us based on our face? Your ATM machine, or as you walk into the door of a shopping mall, they know who you are. And so this information is now being utilized. And not only for that purpose, but also for law enforcement. I mean, we have millions, hundreds of millions of surveillance cameras, CCTV cameras. In China alone, there are close to 600 million networked CCTV cameras, and they're being used to recognize individuals based on the face. In Las Vegas casinos, they have surveillance cameras at the entrance, and the purpose there is to recognize the high rollers and the cheaters, the known cheaters. And so these kinds of applications do exist currently. So what is the meaning of the word biometrics? It actually comes from two Greek words, bios, which means body, and metron means measurements. So biometrics is measurement of the body. And these measurements can be face, fingerprint, iris, voice, name it. I mean, a lot of different traits have been actually investigated. So I gave an example of ATM machine where you don't know who's entering the PIN and the card. So now this is in Brazil, the Bradesco Bank in Brazil, which is using biometric-enabled ATM. So here they're using card, PIN, and palm vein. So palm vein can also be touchless, and later we will show you an example from the Amazon Go, which has recently, this year announced the touchless palm print. And the touchless is also becoming very interesting because of the COVID outbreak around the globe. And so people are moving towards face, which is a touchless acquisition, and in this case, palm-vein system. So this is a three-factor authentication. The idea is that the biometric doesn't have to replace your traditional tokens or credentials. So you could have depending on the security level, you could have a three-factor authentication. You could even, if you want, if somebody is making a $1 million purchase in your store, you could even have palm, vein, and face, for example. Palm, vein, face, card, and PIN. So in fact, that's the one way to improve the security for high-value transaction. And for the very low-value transaction, you may not care. In fact, at least in the United States, when we make a purchase with Visa or any other credit card, if the purchase is less than $20, and now maybe some stores are saying less than $50, they don't even ask you for signature. I mean, if you look at what kind of signature you put in on the credit card, it could be just any scribble, and they don't match it. It's just for their record. So the idea is that security is essentially a risk assessment, and the goal of any organization is to minimize the risk, and so you can minimize the risk in many ways, and biometrics has been found to be one of the components for minimizing the risk. So how does a biometric recognition system work? Its idea is very simple. There are two phases: enrollment. So let's say your organization wants to use biometrics for either access control or customer checkout or whatever application you have in mind, or healthcare industry. You enroll the person. Enrollment means you capture their biometric in a controlled setting, and you link that with the customer's record, with name and mobile number or whatever. The biometric image which is captured, or in the case of voice, a signal, it is pre-processed. Pre-processing means basically we want to remove the noise. In the case of voice, there may be background noise, so you want to remove the background noise. In the case of face, you want to remove the background when the face image is acquired, and then you extract some features from it. You don't match it in the pixel domain. You extract some high-level features, and then you store it in a database called the template database. Okay, I mean, Aadhaar system also works in exactly the same way. You know, you go to an registrar's registration center, provide your biometrics, and and you don't even know what kind of pre-processing goes on, because you're done after you've done the enrollment. But there are a lot of back-end issues which go on, and then finally there is a huge database in Bangalore where these templates are stored. And so template is sort of a compact representation of the biometric image or signal which you have, because you know, there's a lot of noise in the captured image or signal. So that's why a template database is very critical, and you have to secure it very well. So the security of the template database is extremely, extremely critical. And now in your organization, the size of the database may be 5,000, 10,000, 100,000. But in the case of Aadhaar, the national ID system, it is 1.3 billion individuals. That's the world's largest biometric system, and I'll talk more about it. After this enrollment is done, then we have authentication. So now your customer comes to your store and you want to authenticate who this person is. The customer either may claim who he is, or he doesn't claim anything. He just puts his finger on the fingerprint reader, and I want to know if it is MD or somebody else. And so then the same process goes on. You capture the image at the authentication time. You apply the same kind of pre-processing to clean it up, extract the same features which you did for the enrollment image, and now you have a matcher module, which compares the template image to the authentication image. And then the answer output of this box can be yes or no. That's what Aadhaar does. If a bank sends a query to the Aadhaar, is this customer's fingerprint linked to that particular Aadhaar number, 12-digit number, which the customer provides, then the answer the bank receives from Aadhaar is only yes or no. That's all. And that's one way to maintain the security. No score is sent to the bank saying, oh, I'm confident 90% of the time that this is indeed the person. So as I mentioned, authentication typically means I claim who I am, and then I'm verified that whether what my claim is correct or not. In the case of identification, I don't claim anything. And then it is compared with everything in the template database to decide whether I'm one of the persons already enrolled in the database or I'm not. So this is the general concept. And I'll just focus on the false accept rate and false reject rate, which is for the authentication, proportion of imposters accepted, proportion of genuine users rejected. And these two errors are very important because the same system can operate, same fingerprint matching system can operate at different threshold values to control false accept and false reject. Unfortunately, these two errors are not independent, as we will show later. So as an organization, you have to decide what is more important. Do you want to upset the genuine users? If you don't want to upset the genuine users, then you want to have a very low false reject rate, okay? But if you have a high security installation, then you want to have a very low false accept rate. So this is how the authentication works. And in fact, some banks and credit card companies are interested in self-enrollment rather than going to the bank and enrolling for the biometric system. They want you to self-enroll at home. And so how would they do that? They can scan their driver license photo. This is what my former student did, Kai Kao. He took the query is a scanned copy of his driver license. That's why it is a little bit fuzzy. And the other one is his selfie. And he can send both of them to the bank. And the bank's face recognition system will determine that the person who is self-enrolling is actually indeed verifying himself based on the credential he's providing, namely the photo on the driver license. And then there is an identification where we want to give a photo of a person and say, who is this person? Because I don't know who is this person. I just watched this face image on the TV and I captured the frame and I want to know who is this person. So we search a database and of size N, and then we say, aha, this is the George Bush Jr., right? And this is how the search works. So in the case of, if you have a CCTV camera in your organization and somebody walks in and you want to know who that person is not claiming who he is. We just want to find out, is he on some kind of a store's watch list? So in the case of Aadhaar, the value of N is 1.3 billion. And when we talk about Aadhaar, we'll explain why this size of the database matters. So I think with that, let me take a few-minute break in case you have any questions to ask.
Right now, there are no questions, Dr. Jain.
Okay. Okay.
So we'll just move on. And folks, please post your questions as they come to you.
I would like this to be as interactive as possible and make sure that I know the audience in this kind of forum is very mixed in the sense that some don't know enough about biometrics and some are experts and maybe know more than me. But so be patient. But hopefully this will be of value to everyone and getting questions answered here. We are among friends, so please, no question is complicated or too easy.
Sure.
So, so as I mentioned, that biometrics means measurement of the body. So the question is, what kind of measurements of the body we can take? The earliest example of biometric, which was primarily used in law enforcement and forensic, is the fingerprint. And it's quite amazing that, if you look at any of your fingers, at the tip of your fingers, you will see this pattern, which is like ridges and valleys. The ridges and valleys are flowing in some systematic manner, orderly manner, which is often referred to as a flow pattern. So what you see on the upper left is a fingerprint. And it's a decent quality fingerprint. Not everybody has the same fingerprint. We are all office workers, so generally we don't do too much manual work and our fingerprints are pretty good. But if you go to a village where you talk to a farmer or construction worker, their fingerprints will be pretty lousy. And sometimes fingerprint recognition has problems, even in Aadhaar, where you go for authentication and it's not very easy to get authenticated. So for a long time, and still is, fingerprint is the most popular biometric. And then face recognition was introduced. But the face recognition accuracy was not very good until 10 years ago. And then there was a lot of research and government money which was put into not only in the United States, but in Europe and so on. And the face recognition accuracy is now getting extremely accurate. And face has many advantages, right? I mean, the first of all is you can capture a face image at a distance. The person doesn't have to touch anything. And the other most important thing is face can be captured in a covert manner. That is, without you knowing, I can capture your face image. And that's the beauty of it in terms of the CCTV. And at the same time, it also raises the privacy issues. I can capture anybody's face. The question is, what can I do with it? If I try to find out some more detailed personal information about that person, that is infringing on the privacy. Okay. And this issue has been coming up in the US more and more so, and as well as in Europe. And you may have heard of the GDPR, the privacy regulation in Europe. And India's parliament is also considering a bill on the Indian Privacy Act. So this is becoming an important issue. In fact, Facebook is also being sued by several government agencies in the US about privacy, especially their photo tagging service, where I may be a user of Facebook, so I have an account, but I take a group photo and post it on my Facebook account. Facebook currently can mine that and take my friend's photo without their permission, even though they have, and they don't have a Facebook account. So these kinds of issues are raising. And then there is a iris, the fourth image in the top row is the iris image. And then there's a palm print. So the voice patterns, geometry of the hand, I mean, there are all kinds of biometrics. Some people are looking at the EKG signal, infrared face image, signature, as I already talked about. I mean, very few individuals are using signatures, except in a country like Spain. It seems like people go through all kinds of trouble to get a custom signature made. They pay some individual to design a signature for them. So, and they take relish in signing their document with this very specialized signature. So some banks in Spain still use signature, but as you know, in the United States and other countries, I mean, you can scribble anything, and now with more and more digital banking, signature is out of scope. So the three most popular traits are fingerprint, face, and iris. And I'm just giving an example of some of the countries where they're using this at the airport. So for example, Incheon, South Korea, for their smart entry system, they use fingerprints. In Australia, Smart Gate, they're using face recognition. In fact, Australia, New Zealand, they all use face recognition for entry, exit. And then Schiphol's, one of the oldest system is Privium system which uses iris. That is not a government mandated program, but this is a convenience thing. So if you are a frequent traveler, you don't want to stand in line too long to talk to the immigration agent or to the security, and you just go through in terms of verifying who you are. So it costs about 100 euros a month. So the reason why these three traits are very important are because of their uniqueness. That is, they have been shown to be different for different individuals. In fact, face was not so, and the second thing is persistence. So face is a difficult scenario to put in this category because identical twins have the same face, but iris and fingerprints are different for identical twins. Face persistence is an issue with face because as people age, face appearance changes and face recognition system often have trouble. But with the advancement in face recognition technology, it has been shown that some of the best face recognition engines can work quite well, even time-separated images of 12 years. And that is why you can imagine that most government-issued documents like passports and driver licenses, which use face as an identifier, have limited finite expiration date so that you can provide your new face image for these documents. And they have also been shown to be extremely accurate, very fast search on a very large database. So face recognition can be searched at the speed of 10 million per second on a commodity processor. And the same is true for iris and fingerprints. And the most important is the legacy data. That means all the government agencies have face and fingerprint in one form or the other. And in India, they also have iris images. Right? Initially, when Aadhaar was envisaged, people didn't think it would be required, but now with all the applications where Aadhaar card is required, almost everybody in India has the Aadhaar card, except those who are under 5 years old, because typically Aadhaar is issued at the age of 5, but nobody checks your date of birth when you go and get an Aadhaar. So some may be 4 years old and so on, but then they have to re-enroll at the age of 15. And by the way, I mean, Aadhaar will always be in the business of enrollment because currently 25 million babies are born in India every year. So at some point every year they will have some business to do. They will not be out of business in terms of enrollment. So biometric milestones, I want to give you some idea of how biometrics evolved and how it came to be where we are. So in 1905, that's the first use of fingerprints in Scotland by Scotland Yard. And notice that there were no computers that time, so fingerprints were being matched manually. And there were two reasons. One is to find out if a person is arrested, they want to know whether we have seen him before or not. That is he a what do you call it? Habitual criminal, or when at a crime scene you leave a partial fingerprint, then we want to know who the culprit is by matching him into the criminal database. But you can imagine this was a very tedious process. Then in 1924, the United States Congress authorized the Department of Justice to collect fingerprints and arrest information, and that's when the FBI was formed. And I'm showing you here traditional 10-print fingerprint card, which is used to book criminals. And on the left, I'm showing you a typical partial fingerprint, which is found in a crime scene. So in this particular case, the partial fingerprint happens to be on a bank check. And based on that, we want to know who this person is. So this is referred to as latent fingerprint recognition. And that's a rather challenging problem. But this 10-print card, even if you are not booked, I have provided my 10-print card when I want to work on some government panel or get onto the advisory board of a government agency because they want to know whether I have a prior criminal record or not. So the top two rows in this card show what is called the rolled fingerprint, where somebody holds your finger. And in old days, they applied the ink to your finger and then rolled it on the white piece of paper. But now we have slap fingerprints, which is the bottom row. It's referred to as 4-4-2 capture. 4 fingers on the left hand, 4 fingers on the right hand, and 2 thumbs. And that's what Aadhaar captures when you want to get a Aadhaar number. But at the authentication time, you provide only 1 fingerprint, because it will take too much time if you have to provide all 10 fingerprints. So continuing with the law enforcement, in 1999, the FBI integrated all the 50 states' automated fingerprint identification system. The automation of fingerprint matching didn't start till 1980. Until then, all the fingerprints were kept in a filing cabinet, and it was a very tedious process to do the matching. But now, you can do instantaneous search in the fingerprint database and get an answer quickly, whether you are in Michigan, law enforcement agencies in Michigan, California, and the FBI database is about 130 million records. That is 130 million individuals whose fingerprints are there. So Aadhaar with 1.3 billion is an order of magnitude larger than the earlier largest system. And then the law enforcement decided that instead of just relying on fingerprint, why don't we capture other information? So for example, iris, face, palm print, and then what is called the scars, marks, and tattoos. Remember, these are the, when you applied for the passport, I don't know whether you do it now or not. When you apply for a passport, you give some body's identification mark, okay? And so that's where the scars, marks, and tattoos come in. But now, the tattoo has become so popular. I don't know about India, but at least in the United States, Mexico, other countries, it is extremely popular. People just have it as a social acceptance or something, but earlier, 30 years ago, it was not considered a very good thing to have a tattoo, although in villages, people still had the tattoos. Their name was written on it because this way they know, they can show that and say, oh, this is me. But tattoo has become very popular for criminal identification. And for FBI, we did a very large project to build a automated tattoo identification system. Because if they found a body in a park and the victim didn't have any other identifying information except the tattoo, FBI wanted to search it in a database to find out who this person potentially is by identifying the style of the tattoo, or if the tattoo indicated belongingness to some criminal gang or social group, and so on. And then the landscape changed in biometrics with the 2001 attack in the United States. And at that time, the US Congress decided that, we need to have some mechanism to ensure that the person who's entering the United States does not have a criminal record. So that's when the Department of Homeland Security was formed. And in 2003, they said at every port of entry, they will capture 2 thumbprints, which will then be matched to the various kinds of databases and instantaneously determine whether this person has a criminal background or some kind of a watch list. And the 2 fingerprints is not as accurate for searching a huge database as 10 fingerprints. And that's why in about 2006 or so, this organization, US Visit, was renamed as OBIM, and it captures all 10 fingerprints because the law enforcement database all captured 10 fingerprints. So that's why they also use 10 fingerprints. And this also should explain why Aadhaar captures 10 fingerprints, 2 irises, and a face image at the enrollment time, because they have to search a database of 1.3 billion. And for accuracy purposes, they need to use that many pieces of information. Just one fingerprint or one finger would not be enough to distinguish 1.3 billion individuals, even though in principle, in theory, you could, but because of the noise during the capture, it's not feasible. Another interesting thing happened when in 2005, the Walt Disney theme park introduced fingerprints in their turnstile. And so basically you entered your ticket, put your finger, and now that fingerprint is linked to that ticket. And the reason is, this is primarily used for fraud detection. That is, the person does not go outside the park and then sell the ticket to somebody else who can reuse it. And so this system, as you can see, the advantage of biometrics or the usability of biometrics is there when it can be integrated in the existing solution. So here, people are used to inserting the ticket in the slit in the turnstile. There's nobody telling them where to put their finger. They're just looking at the person ahead of them. I mean, there are a few attendants around, but you don't have to. You don't have to be given any instructions for it. And the system, I think they get about 300,000 visitors every day, and it's been working very smoothly without any disruption. Now, of course, if you have some religious objections to providing your fingerprints or some other kinds of concern, privacy issue, you can always go to another terminal where it can be manually detected. But here the issue is not security, but that of fraud detection, essentially. Now, there were some privacy concerns that what happens if the FBI comes and says, was Anil Jain in the park today, and then they take my fingerprint. So in any entity, when you install biometrics, there are going to be some privacy issues. In fact, in the United States, in the state of Illinois has one of the toughest biometric privacy laws. So for example, if a factory employs a biometric recognition system for time and attendance, the first question under that, now many companies are being sued under the Illinois Biometric Protection Act, is whether the government or that organization, that factory took a permission, user consent before capturing the fingerprint. Will they share it with somebody? How will that data be secured? And can the employee ask their fingerprints or other biometric to be removed from the database, especially when the person leaves the company? So these are the kinds of issues which I think we need to be aware of in practice. So here is the Aadhaar, world's largest biometric system, and it's been going on for a while, and it has really helped when I first got involved in 2008, when the design was being done, it was really meant to empower the residents of India with a unique identity and a digital platform to authenticate anytime, anywhere. And I think this is one of the marvels of India's achievement, which I think people take it for granted without really appreciating what is the effort involved. And many other countries, developing countries, even country like United States and Britain had attempted to have a national ID, but the cost of the system was so high that they just gave it up. But the system was designed with a lot of care and with security in mind. So I noticed that there are a couple of questions. MD, do you want me to answer them?
I think it's a good time. Yeah. I'll call out the questions, Dr. Jain. Actually, all these are around the face recognition. One is, of course, in terms of aging. I know you touched upon it a little bit. So as the person ages, how many years can the system still recognize a face? That's one question.
Right. Yeah, so aging is a very personal issue. There are some people who tend to age a lot more. others who do not age very well, right? If you are on some medication, or you have, you're smoking something funny, your aging may be more, right? Um, Aging is also more challenging from childhood to teenager, where the facial appearance changes a lot. But I would say for adult population, the most recent evaluation of face recognition tolerance to aging shows about 12 years. Okay. And I think that's why passports are good for 10 years, at least in the US. I'm not sure about India. I think in India also it's good for 10
Yes.
years.
Here
And
too,
after that, you're supposed to provide a new photo. And also driver license here is, which has a photo, is good for 5 years.
Yeah. And similar kind of a question again on, changes to the face, like growing a mustache and beard and or wearing spectacles and all that. So is the feature extraction such that, those can be managed as well?
It depends on the amount of occlusion you put on your face. So for example, in the early case, I remember when you looked at the Osama bin Laden's face, okay, before you do the face recognition, you have to detect the face. If I can't detect the face, I cannot do the recognition, right? So the Osama bin Laden's, if you remember, some of you, face had so much facial hair that the face detection algorithm, which was trained on normal faces with some beard and stuff, couldn't detect that face. So I think the face detection has improved, face feature extraction has improved, but you can certainly have certain amount of occlusion, and maybe I will have a chance to show some occluded images, like these with the mask now. Because of the COVID, everybody is wearing a mask. So the face recognition system has to be now tolerant to mask, but that's becoming rather difficult. The accuracy drops. You can do it. So instead of recognizing on the face, they're recognizing the eye regions. Okay, and because that provides a lot of information on the face is centered around the eyes. Okay, so if we are not covering the eyes, but if you are wearing sunglasses and a mask, that will be
that's a problem.
That's a problem. So you can always hide your identity, but if you are a cooperative user, you will remove the sunglasses. Maybe you be asked to adjust at the authentication station to just unmask yourself for a few minutes or a minute or so. But that is a real issue. You can also be wearing a mask, and if I have a chance, I will show you. So, okay, yeah. Let's move on. Any other question?
Yeah, this is one more.
Yes.
You talked about fingerprint, face, and iris. Is there one which is better than the other in terms of accuracy and false negatives, false positives?
Yeah, the choice of a biometric trait actually depends on the system requirement and the system and the integration into the system, right? So in the case of Disney World, they chose fingerprint because it was very easy to install, integrate it, or embed it, right? For a long time, mobile phone had, since 2013 or 14, when iPhone came out with fingerprint, okay, it was, fingerprint was easy to embed in the home button. I mean, that's the beauty of the Apple products, the usability, right? It's not that the fingerprints were not used in mobile phones earlier. Motorola had it, but the fingerprint was at the back and you had to roll your finger, and now they came up with the face. Why did they come up with face with iPhone 10? Because they wanted to increase the screen size. So they had to get rid of the home button, right? In iPhone 10, there is no home button and there is no white bezel, right? In this phone, for example, there is a bezel. I have an iPhone 8, right? So now they got rid of the fingerprint reader, okay? And they came out with face, but face recognition integrated with mobile phone with anti-spoof capability. So that I don't put MD's photo in front of MD's phone is rather expensive. That's why that costs $1,000. So now the Chinese phone companies, which you probably have seen in India, Xiaomi and others, they have fingerprint under the screen. And Apple couldn't perfect that when they released the iPhone 10. I mean, they release one new phone every year, so they couldn't perfect it. That's why they went with face. But who knows? They may come back with the fingerprint under the screen. Okay. All right.
Sure. Yeah, we can move on now.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So this is the typical enrollment for Aadhaar, which all of you know. But the most important thing and the most challenging thing in Aadhaar is the deduplication. We have, when a new person comes, suppose I come and say, I need an Aadhaar. You don't have to be a US citizen, by the way. You have to be living there for at least 6 months. You go and say, I need Aadhaar. They take my biometric. They don't trust my name. So they will search 1.3 billion database to find if there is somebody in the database with same fingerprints, face, and iris. And if they don't find it, then they will give me an Aadhaar number. And this is why they took I remember this because in the proof of concept they did in 2008 or 9, they said, okay, does the accuracy improve for search by combining fingerprint and iris? So the green curve is the accuracy for fingerprints. Sorry, not accuracy, error rate. The red one is for iris. And when we combine the two in terms of search, then we get the blue curve. So that is the error decreases quite a bit. And that's the reason for doing the fusion. Of course, this was done based on 20,000, proof of concept was done with 20,000 subjects. So here's the mobile phone, 2013, Apple Touch ID. Then the Apple Pay came in 2014. So, Apple has been the trailblazer in terms of consumer market, especially when it relates to biometrics. And now other companies have similar products. And then 2017, they came with Face ID. And the idea was to remove the bezel and increase the screen size. This is the 2018, the first in-display fingerprint sensor. Okay, so this took some time to design because we worked with a Chinese company which had that. You have to sense the fingerprint through the glass screen. So this means the screen material had to be changed. And now credit card companies are looking into putting this is referred to as match on card. That means you store your fingerprint on the card, the template, and then you have a reader on the card, and all the matching is done on the card itself. That is, your fingerprint never leaves. And then a Bluetooth communication tells yes or no in terms of when you put your finger on the reader. So here is the Amazon Go. Some of you may know it's a cashierless store, and it's being introduced in many cities. And they introduced, so you are being recognized by face, and you just enter and exit with a mobile phone. And when you pick up some product, there are some sensors in the shelf and ceiling, and so they know automatically what you picked up. And then the money will be deducted from your account. So these are small stores, not a huge store, but they are in your convenience stores kind of a thing. And now they just announced, they refer to just walkout shopping, and where they have a touchless palm print, and they're using that. And maybe this is being used primarily so that, sometimes face recognition may be challenging, and so say, okay, you can't ask the customer to remove your sunglasses and so on. This is the Aadhaar authentication. You're already familiar with it. And there was a lot of misinformation in the media that, oh, if I post my Aadhaar number, then my account is compromised. No, you have to also provide your biometric. It's a two-factor authentication. So it's not just that the Aadhaar number would work. You have to have Aadhaar number and the fingerprint linked with that. And so it does, the recent statistics I saw on the UID website is the 40 million authentications per day. There are some other applications in India primarily for time and attendance. On the upper right side, is the time and attendance type of application. So you can think of time and attendance in any organization, whether it's hotel employees, airport employees, a factory, and so on. So these are the different applications. There's a biometric ATM in India, some places. But as I said, return on investment is the key. I mean, I think the throughput is important, return on investment, robustness of the system. You don't want it to be worrying about breakdowns and stuff, because that will cause huge backlog. So errors, I just want to show you how this similarity is computed between two biometrics, whether it's face, fingerprint, or iris. So we have a query fingerprint and we have an enrolled fingerprint in the database. So these are the two images, and we want to determine whether they come from the same person or not. So I extract some features from it. And in the case of fingerprints, for over 100 years, the minutia points, the rich pattern, where they end and where they bifurcate, are the ones which have been traditionally used, and all the commercial systems still use it, although some have started using deep print, but deep networks. And so then we compare these minutia points, and that's a complicated process of doing a transformation between them. And we come up with a similarity score of 0.9 on a scale of 0 to 1. And now we have to decide, organization has to decide, is this similarity value sufficiently large to claim that these two fingerprints were made by the same finger? And in order to do that, this is where you have to rely on how much false reject rate and false accept rate you want, okay? So I'm shown here, suppose I use a threshold, which I have marked in a vertical line. And if I choose that, then I will have certain amount of false accept and certain amount of false reject. So I can move that threshold either to a lower value or larger value to get either a lower false accept or to get a lower false reject. And as I said earlier, if it is a low security application, you don't want to upset your genuine customer. But if it is a high security application, you want to minimize any imposter entering the store. So what is the state of the art accuracy? For fingerprint, and these are all third-party evaluation, not claimed by the vendor. For fingerprint, we can get over 99% accuracy for 1 in 10,000 false accept. For iris, similar performance. For face, similar true accept rate. Notice that the false accept rate has a 1 0 missing, so it is 1 out of 1,000, as opposed to 1 out of 10,000 for face and fingerprint and iris. Okay, so I noticed that I'm only have 5 to 8 minutes left. I just want to take 1 or 2 more slides here and then answer questions. So now the whole world of commercial face recognition system and so on is relying on deep networks. And deep networks, the main advantage of deep networks is that now there is no need for manual feature definition or extraction. The network does a joint learning of what features are the best, and then makes a decision about the recognition. So I just want to leave it there because the concept is more difficult. Challenges. So image quality versus accuracy. So even though face recognition has improved a lot over the years, if I start giving you face images from drones or a low resolution CCTV cameras, then the recognition performance is still low. So larger the variation in pose, illumination, expression, and aging, the lower the recognition accuracy. Then how do we know which faces are real and which faces are fake? I mean, I could be showing my face image in front of the terminal from an iPad or something, okay? Or I can be just holding a piece of paper. So this is a topic which we have been working on for some time. So here the red boxes show that these are not real faces, and the green boxes show these are the real faces. But this is becoming more challenging as very high quality silicon masks are coming out, which cost about $2,000 or $3,000. So if somebody is really want to hack a jewelry store or so on, it's possible that they can fool the system. And I think the privacy and civil liberties I have already talked about. Some face recognition systems seem to work well for certain kinds of demographics than the other. How the data be secured, retention policy of the biometric, and function creep. That is, your store is collecting the data for one particular application and then starts using it for some other purposes. For example, for determining whether, for insurance policy, as an example, by looking at the face, can we determine the body mass index and determine the health insurance rates based on that. So I think I should stop here. I don't want to go over the time, and there are some questions here, so let me answer those questions.
Yeah, in fact, you answered some of the questions in the last couple of minutes. So I'll anyway ask some other questions which have come up, which is really on the size of the database that you search. Is there any limit on it? I mean, of course, time becomes an issue, but is there any limit on really the database that can be practically searched?
Right. So I think if you're talking about face recognition, for example, or fingerprint or iris, I think it is possible to search 1 million faces on a commodity processor. Okay.
Wow.
You can stretch it more for certain, it all depends on what template size. And sometimes there is a trade-off between accuracy and speed because, as I talked about, what is the compact representation of the biometric which you store in your database, right? If that compact representation is very elaborate, the searching would take slightly more time. But if you can reduce that, make it more compact, search will be very fast. And that's what so our fingerprint, for example, we can push it up to 8 million or 9 million. And in fact, one of the major companies of biometric, which is also involved in Aadhaar, is going to license that. So I think there's a lot of progress being done. Of course, with 1.3 billion, it has to be done offline. It cannot be done yet in real time. But yeah, I mean, if your organization has 10,000, that's not a problem. In fact, I think the time and attention systems in India can typically handle 5,000. Yeah.
Okay, good. And what about voice? I know you talked about iris, you talked about face, you talked about fingerprint, of course. I mean, you never mentioned voice anywhere. Is voice also?
Yeah, there are some niche applications of voice where, for example, doing banking from home, right? But if you're outdoors or in a noisy environment, the ambient noise can mask that, okay? Another thing is, it's very easy to mimic voice and signature, I mean, there are professional voice mimickers and people who can forge your signature. That's well known, right? So voice has some limited usage where transactions has to be done on the telephone. And so you want to make sure that the connection is good and you're in a quiet room. I mean, if you're in a noisy room, that can cause some problems.
Yeah, but what when you, there may be similar faces as well in your database. I mean, some faces of people may, although rare, could be kind of similar. Are these systems good enough to differentiate between those?
Well, so yes, I mean, as I mentioned already, identical twins will cause a problem, okay? And then there is the doppelgangers, right? I mean, people who look alike. I don't know whether I have a photo of Obama and his doppelganger from Indonesia, but there are. And of course,
okay.
you can have a professional makeup artist which can make MD look like Anil Jain. I mean, so it can be an issue.
Yeah.
Right?
And fraud. I mean, I think these are all similar questions actually. Fraud can be done using deep fake image and video.
Yes. Yes. So that's why multi-factor authentication comes in handy. right? I mean, if you want to really be concerned about the fraud and you are doing high value transaction, okay, go for two-factor authentication. That's what Aadhaar is. Aadhaar does two-factor authentication. I think people forget that because there was a lot of press in India about, oh, somebody posted the Aadhaar number. In fact, one of the first director generals of UIDAI, Ram Sevak Sharma, posted his Aadhaar number, and people were criticizing him. But they forget that you cannot just use somebody's Aadhaar number. And a lot of fraud is in collusion. Okay, frauds are often insider attacks in collusion. Nothing stops from a bank or a other IT department of that organization to go into the template database and change the MD's fingerprint data to my data, right? And now MD is stuck, and then I can withdraw money from MD's account. So the insider attack is one of the more things to worry about. I mean, in India, they have found fake biometrics, where Aadhaar program, and we are working on we have a very nice solution for it. So
okay, cool. Yeah, we've hit 8:31, so I'll just ask one last question. This is related to, I don't know how familiar you are with it, in terms of state of privacy policies on biometrics in India.
Yeah, so as far as I know, a bill has been proposed, okay, and it is under discussion. I think earlier this year, the bill was introduced. I don't think it has been acted upon. In fact, I specifically checked a few days ago as preparing for this talk, what happens to the Indian bill. And so it should be coming up with the parliament sometimes. But I think that's much needed, not just with respect to biometrics, but with other things as well. And remember, there were a lot of attacks on Aadhaar under the privacy law. And in 2018, I was in India at that time, the Supreme Court approved that the social benefit of Aadhaar is more important than the privacy. I mean, that was basically the summary of the Chief Justice of Indian Supreme Court. And that settled the Aadhaar thing, that yes, we can collect your biometric data. And the thing is, you can still refuse, then you will deny yourself of services.
Yeah, correct. Great.
I mean, there are still some questions. So those who want to leave, they can leave. And those who want to have some questions answered, I'm happy to stay for another 10, 15 minutes to answer.
Actually,
or they can send me an email.
Yeah, sure. I'll just ask one more question, Dr. Jain, because in fact, as you spoke, you answered quite a few of these questions as well. Okay. There's, okay, this is interesting. This is, the Aadhaar software. Is it available in open source?
No. So actually, the way Aadhaar works is the Aadhaar did not design the software. Aadhaar simply designed the infrastructure around it, how to check the quality, how to enroll, and things like that. Okay, and then they have 3 biometric vendors. I think this was the first time that in an entity, they chose 3 competing biometric vendors. And the reason for that is so that they can keep on improving the performance of their biometric system for deduplication. Because if they gave sole source to one team and they get locked in for 5 years, right? And the vendor has no incentive to keep improving it. So now what they do is they have 3 online. So the same deduplication query goes to all 3. Okay, and then every 3 months they evaluate how well they're doing, and they increase or decrease the load based on how well they are doing. And since the payment to the vendor is based on per transaction, okay, every vendor has an incentive to keep improving it.
Yeah, in fact, by the way, a similar method is used by some companies with call centers. Depending on, they send it to 3 different centers. Depending on performance, they'll increase the load and
Right.
so on. And it's a good motivation. Yeah, with that,
Yeah,
I
but
think
this
we've
was,
covered.
this was done 10 years ago, 12 years ago, And so, and that was the first time, any government entity in India had even thought about it.
Yeah,
right?
I know that Nandan played a big part in it. I mean,
he did. And also Nandan took the help of some of his IIT Bombay classmates. And then one of those classmates called me in and said, can you assist us in the biometric component?
Yeah.
So I'm still in touch with the Aadhaar. In fact, I've helped them set up a research lab in IIIT Hyderabad. And so to answer that question about available locally, I mean, you can't go buy it, but we are building the software so that I'm helping the Hyderabad team to build the competence to build the software,
Okay.
But it will be
Okay,
Aadhaar
great.
property. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. One more last question. We'll do this, especially on the research side of things of biometrics. So what is the next big kind of problem? I mean, if I was a PhD student, what would you recommend that I take up?
That's $1 million question. I constantly think of it, right? I think the next big thing is somehow capture the whole body information. You walk into the room and there are all kinds of sensors and right away they know MD is MD, right? You don't have to do any explicit interaction, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the key thing. I mean, your wife, Vibha, hears your sound when or the way you turn the lock key in the lock, or your footsteps, or see you from the back, she knows you, right?
Wow.
Or hear one word, and she knows you. So why can't we have a machine which will integrate all this information? And let's just assume that your house has all these kinds of sensors. Or a company conference room has all these sensors in the ceiling, okay? So you're not interacting with them in any way. As soon as he walked in, they know, check the box that MD walked into the room now.
Yeah, it's interesting. That will open up a whole new range of privacy issues as well, I guess.
That's right. In fact, when the Google glasses came out, there was a big privacy issue, and some restaurants and bars would not allow customers to be wearing Google Glass because you could be just capturing somebody's photo.
Sure.
Right? And then if you know somebody in the motor vehicle bureau, you can say, hey, can you tell me who this beautiful woman is or beautiful, handsome man is, right? Yeah. I mean, those are the privacy issues.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, you're in public place. So, anybody can capture your photo, but the question is, how will you end up using it?
Well, okay, we'll wrap up with that, Dr. Jain. Fascinating. Thank you so much. Absolutely enjoyed. Absolutely enjoyed. The only thing I missed in your presentation was all the stats and maths, which I used to see, those many years ago. That is the only thing missing. Otherwise, it was just, it's
so
fantastic.
I have sent you the PDF file. You can share it with the participants, and
this is being recorded as well. So we'll put this up as well. So everybody who's attended, you can take a look. Once again, thank you so much, Dr. Jain.
Thank you. Yeah, Shraddha, can you send me a copy of the video if you don't mind?
Oh yeah.
Sure, Dr. Jain.
Okay. Thank you so much, Shraddha and MD, and to all the participants. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Yes.